I thought my life was finally about to change, in the best possible way. But what I didn't know at the time was that everything I was hoping for, everything I was planning, everything I believed was mine, was already being taken away from me. And the worst part? I had no idea it was happening. Not even a clue. It all started with a phone call. A phone call I will never forget, no matter how much time passes. I remember exactly where I was. Sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by half-finished work, unpaid bills, and that constant, suffocating feeling that my life was going nowhere. My phone rang. I almost didn't pick it up, but something told me I should. And that's when I heard the news. My grandfather had passed away. There was silence on my end. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to react. You see, we hadn't been very close in the last few years. Life had gotten busy. I moved to the city. He stayed at the ranch. Calls became less frequent. Visits became rare. And like most people, I always thought there would be more time. More time to visit. More time to talk. More time to sit with him on that old wooden porch, listening to his stories while the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills. But suddenly, there was no more time. And that reality hit harder than I expected. Because growing up, that man meant everything to me. He wasn't just my grandfather. He was my escape. Every summer, I would leave behind the noise of the city and spend weeks at his ranch. And that place, it felt like a completely different world. I can still remember waking up early in the morning, the air fresh and cool, the smell of grass mixed with earth and wood, the sound of birds in the distance, and the soft rustling of the wind moving through the fields. There was a kind of peace there, the kind you don't realize you need until it's gone. At night, we'd sit outside under the open sky. No city lights, no noise, just stars, endless stars. And my grandfather would tell stories. Stories about his life, about how he built that ranch from nothing, about the struggles, the sacrifices, the long days, and even longer nights. He believed in simple things. Hard work, honesty, doing what's right, even when it costs you. Values that feel rare these days. And maybe that's why that place meant so much to me. Because it wasn't just land. It was everything he stood for. So when I got the call about his passing, it didn't just feel like losing a person. It felt like losing a piece of my past. A piece of who I was. A few days later, I received another call. This time, from a legal office. They told me my grandfather had left behind a will. And there was something I needed to know. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe some small savings. A few belongings. Something symbolic. But then they said something that completely caught me off guard. He had left the ranch. To me. I didn't speak for a few seconds. I just sat there, trying to process what I had just heard. The ranch. That ranch. The place I had spent my childhood. The place that meant more to me than anything. It was mine. It didn't feel real. But as they explained the details, it slowly started to sink in. And with that realization, something inside me changed. Because at that point in my life, I needed a way out. More than anything, I was exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, physically. Every day felt the same. Wake up, go to a job I didn't care about. Sit in traffic. Come home to an apartment that didn't feel like home. Repeat. Again, and again, and again. I felt stuck. Like I was watching my life pass by, without actually living it. But this inheritance, this ranch, it wasn't just property. It was a second chance. A real one. A chance to start over. To leave behind everything that was draining me. And build something meaningful. Something real. For the first time in years, I felt hope. Genuine hope. And I held on to it. Tightly. I didn't waste any time. I started making plans almost immediately. I spoke to my boss and told him I'd be leaving soon. I began packing up my apartment, box by box, slowly letting go of a life I never really wanted. I even started researching ways to restore the ranch. Fix the fences. Repaint the house. Clean up the land. Maybe even bring animals back someday. Turn it into something alive again. Something that honored my grandfather's legacy. I could picture it. Clear as day. Morning coffee on the porch. Quiet evenings under the stars. A life that felt real. For the first time in a long time. I wasn't just existing. I was looking forward to something. Of course, there was paperwork involved. Legal processes. Ownership transfers. Documents that needed signatures. Nothing unusual. Nothing alarming. Everything seemed normal. Routine. I stayed in contact with the legal office handling the estate. They kept telling me the same thing. Everything is progressing, just slowly. And I believed them. Because why wouldn't I? This was official. handled by professionals. There was no reason to doubt it. But while I was busy planning my future, while I was imagining my new life, while I was trusting the process, something else was happening. Behind the scenes, quietly, carefully, step by step, someone was making moves. Moves that would change everything. And I had absolutely no idea. Days turned into weeks. Weeks started to feel longer. But I stayed patient. I kept preparing, kept planning, kept believing that everything was falling into place. Looking back now, that trust, that patience, that belief that everything was fine, might have been my biggest mistake. Still, there was something pulling me back to the ranch. A feeling I couldn't ignore. So I made a decision. Before everything was finalized, before I officially moved in, I wanted to go there. Just once. To see it again. To stand on that land. And remind myself why all of this mattered. Why I was doing it. Why it meant so much. I thought it would be a peaceful visit. A quiet moment. A chance to reconnect with something I had missed for so long. But I was wrong. Completely wrong. Because that visit, that one simple decision, would become the moment everything started to fall apart. And I had no idea what I was about to walk into. The drive to the ranch felt different this time. Not like before. Not like all those summers growing up, when every mile brought excitement. This time, there was excitement, yes. But there was something else too. Something I couldn't explain. A strange, quiet feeling sitting deep in my chest. Like a warning. Like my instincts were trying to tell me something. But I didn't want to listen. At first, I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking. That this was just nerves. After all, this wasn't just a visit anymore. This was my future. My new life. Of course it would feel different. Right? But the closer I got to the property, the stronger that feeling became. It didn't fade. It didn't go away. It grew. Heavier. Sharper. More real. Until it was impossible to ignore. And then, I saw it. A truck. Parked near the house. I slowed down instantly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. That didn't make sense. That didn't make any sense at all. No one was supposed to be there. No workers had been scheduled. No one had permission. This place was supposed to be empty, waiting for me. I pulled the car over slowly. My mind started racing, trying to come up with explanations. Simple ones. Safe ones. Maybe the legal office sent someone. Maybe maintenance. Maybe security. Something routine. Something normal. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't normal. Not at all. As I stepped out of the car, the silence felt different. Heavier. Unfamiliar. Even the air felt strange. Like I didn't belong there anymore. I started walking toward the house. Slowly. Carefully. Taking in everything around me. And that's when I noticed it. The details. The small things. The things that shouldn't have been there. Fresh tire marks in the dirt. Not old ones. Not faded. Fresh. Recent. Footprints. Multiple. Back and forth. Like someone had been moving things in and out. And then, the gate. I stopped. Just stood there for a second. Staring at it. Because something about it felt wrong. And then I realized why. The lock. It wasn't the same. It had been changed. Replaced. With a new one. One I had never seen before. That's when my heart started beating faster. Not just faster. Harder. Like it was trying to catch up with something my mind hadn't fully accepted yet. I told myself to stay calm. There had to be an explanation. There had to be. I kept repeating that in my head as I walked toward the house. Step by step. Trying to control my breathing. Trying to stay rational. Trying not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was maintenance. Maybe someone made a mistake. Maybe. But the closer I got, the harder it became to believe those things. Because now I could see inside. Through the windows. And what I saw didn't belong. Furniture. Different furniture. Not my grandfather's. Not the old wooden pieces I remembered. This was new. Modern. Completely out of place. That's when it hit me. Hard. This wasn't maintenance. This wasn't a mistake. Someone was living here. I walked up to the front door. My steps slower now. Heavier. Uncertain. And then I knocked. Once. Twice. The seconds stretched. Felt longer than they should have. Like time itself was holding its breath. And then, the door opened. A man stood there. Someone I had never seen before. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look confused. He didn't look like someone caught off guard. He looked comfortable. Relaxed. Like this was his home. Like I was the one interrupting something. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Because I knew. This wasn't going to be a simple conversation. I tried to stay calm. tried to keep my voice steady, and I said, "Hey, I think there's been some confusion. This is my grandfather's ranch. I inherited it." I expected hesitation, confusion, questions, anything. But I didn't get any of that. He didn't even blink, didn't pause, didn't second-guess himself. He just looked at me and said, "No, I bought this place." Just like that. Simple, calm, certain. Like he was telling me the sky was blue. Like there was no room for doubt. For a second, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my mind refused to process what I had just heard. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. I shook my head, tried again, explained everything. Slower this time. More clearly. My grandfather. The will. The inheritance. The legal process. Every detail. But he didn't change. Didn't react. Didn't question himself. He just stood there. Calm. Too calm. And that's when I realized something. He believed what he was saying. Completely. And that's what made it worse. Then he said something. Something that made everything feel even heavier. Even more real. He said the sale had been handled. Through the HOA. I froze for a second. Because that didn't make sense. Not even a little. Yes, there was an HOA. They had rules. Regulations. Guidelines. But they didn't have the power to sell someone's property. Not like that. Not without proper notice. Not without involving the actual owner. At least, that's what I thought. I didn't argue anymore. I couldn't. My thoughts were everywhere. Nothing was lining up. Nothing was clear. So I stepped back. Slowly. Still looking at him. Still trying to understand what was happening. But there were no answers there. Only certainty. His certainty. And that was enough to tell me. Something was seriously wrong. I walked back to my car. Each step heavier than the last. The place that once felt like home. Now felt distant. Unfamiliar. Almost Jewish. I sat inside the car for a moment. Hands on the steering wheel. Staring ahead. Not moving. Trying to process everything. Trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. How could this happen? How could my grandfather's ranch be sold? Without me knowing? Without me being involved? Without anyone telling me? It wasn't just confusing. It was impossible. Or at least, it should have been. But it happened. Right in front of me. I left the property that day. But I didn't feel like I was leaving. I felt like something had been taken from me. Something important. Something personal. Something I wasn't ready to lose. I felt shaken. Confused. Angry. All at the same time. But more than anything, I needed answers. Real answers. Because somehow, some way, the place that meant everything to me was no longer mine. And I had no idea how that was even possible. The next morning, I didn't waste a single second. I woke up early. Earlier than usual. But honestly, I don't even think I slept that night. My mind wouldn't stop. Every moment from the previous day kept replaying in my head. The truck. The lock. The man at the door. And those words. I bought this place. It didn't feel real. But it was. And I needed answers. Real answers. Not assumptions. Not guesses. The truth. So I got in my car. And drove straight to the HOA office. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I had one goal in mind. I wasn't leaving. Until I understood exactly what had happened. The drive felt shorter this time. Not because the distance changed. But because my mind was focused. Locked in. Every thought pointed in one direction. Something was wrong. And someone knew about it. When I arrived, everything looked normal. Too normal. The building was clean. Well-maintained. Quiet. Almost peaceful. Like nothing had ever gone wrong there. I walked inside. The air felt cool. Controlled. Like everything in that place was carefully managed. The receptionist looked up and smiled. Friendly. Professional. "Good morning," she said. Like it was just another ordinary day. I forced a small nod. But inside, there was nothing normal about how I felt. I told her I needed to speak with the HOA president. She asked for my name. Typed something into her computer. Then said, "Please have a seat." So I sat. And waited. Seconds felt longer than they should have. Every sound in that office felt amplified. The clicking of a keyboard. The faint hum of the air conditioning. Distant footsteps in the hallway. Everything felt slow. Heavy. Like time itself was stretching. But underneath all of that, there was tension. A quiet tension that I couldn't shake. Because I knew. This place held answers. Answers I wasn't ready to hear. After a few minutes, the door opened. And she walked out. The HOA president. She looked exactly how you'd expect someone in that position to look. Put together, confident, calm, too calm. She smiled, warm, controlled, like she had done this 1,000 times before. And in that moment, something inside me sharpened, because I could already feel it. This wasn't going to be simple. She invited me into her office, closed the door behind us, and sat down across from me. "Now," she said, still smiling, "how can I help you?" I didn't waste time. I told her everything. From the beginning. My grandfather. The inheritance. The legal process. My visit to the ranch. The man living there. His claim that he had bought the property. Every detail. She listened. Quietly. Nodding occasionally. Maintaining eye contact. But something about it felt off. Not her words. Not her expressions. Her calmness. It didn't match the situation. Because if what I was saying was true, if there had really been a mistake that big, there should have been concern, confusion, urgency, something. But there wasn't. And then, she spoke. And what she said changed everything. She told me the property had been legally sold. Just like that. Simple. Final. For a second, I didn't respond, because I needed to make sure I heard her correctly. "Sold?" I asked. She nodded, still calm, still composed. According to her, there had been uncertainty surrounding ownership after my grandfather passed. She said the situation wasn't clear, that there were complications. And because of that, the property had been processed for sale. I felt my jaw tighten, because none of that made sense. Then she added something else, something that made my chest feel heavy. She claimed that attempts had been made to contact the rightful heir, multiple times, but no response had been received. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. Because that was a lie. A clear one. I had proof. Emails, phone records, messages, documents, everything showing that I had been actively involved from the beginning. I hadn't disappeared. I hadn't ignored anything. I had done everything right. So how did this happen? How did a property that legally belonged to me end up being sold without me even knowing? The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I leaned forward slightly, looked directly at her, and asked the question that had been building in my mind. Who bought the property? For the first time, she hesitated. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but I saw it. A pause, a shift, just for a second. And in that moment, I knew. Whatever answer was coming next, it wasn't going to be good. Then she said it. My son-in-law. And just like that, everything made sense. Every piece, every detail, every moment that didn't add up. It all came together. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Carefully, deliberately. While I was grieving, while I was trusting the process, while I was believing that everything was being handled properly, she was working behind the scenes, creating just enough uncertainty to justify action, pushing things forward, controlling the narrative, and then selling the property, not to a stranger, not to the highest bidder, but to her own family, keeping everything close, contained, hidden. I felt something rise inside me, something stronger than anger. Betrayal. Because this wasn't just about losing property. This was about trust, about power, about someone using their position to take something that didn't belong to them. And for a moment, I just sat there, silent, processing everything. She continued speaking, explaining policies, procedures, technicalities. But I wasn't really listening anymore, because the truth was already clear, and no explanation could change that. I stood up slowly. She stopped talking, looked at me, still calm, still composed, like she believed this was over, like she thought I would accept it, walk away, move on. But she was wrong, completely wrong, because I wasn't done, not even close. I walked out of that office, but this time, I wasn't confused. I wasn't uncertain. I was focused. Every step felt heavier, but clearer, because now I knew what I was dealing with. This wasn't an accident. This was something I had to fight. So I went home, sat down, and gathered everything. Every document, every email, every message, every piece of proof I had. I went through it all, carefully, thoroughly, building something stronger than emotion. Evidence. Because if this was going to be a fight, I wasn't going in unprepared. And once everything was ready, I made one more decision. I contacted a lawyer. Because if they thought I was just going to walk away from this, if they believed that they could take something from me and face no consequences, they were about to find out exactly how wrong they were.